Hello and welcome to Bandwidth Conversations, where we find out about the stories and journeys of creatives and rock stars of life. My guest today is both a creative and a rock star of life. In fact, he is multi-talented. Not only is he a brilliant writer, actor, presenter and comedian, he's also a key figure in one of football's most heartwarming modern stories. From the stage to the pitch, he's brought humour, heart and chutzpah. I can't quite believe my luck that I am talking today to Wrexham's Executive Director, Humphrey Ker. Thank you so much, Humphrey, for giving up your time today when you are so crazy busy.
Hello. I didn't recognise myself in the description you gave, but I'm glad you said my name at the end. There wasn't someone else coming on this call. That's a very flattering description.
Before we go back in time, Humphrey, and track your journey to date, I want to talk about what you're up to right now. For anyone listening years from now, it's 14th of November 2025 until the 18th of January 2026. You are performing Sherlock Holmes and the 12 Days of Christmas at the Birmingham Rep. And at the time of this recording, you're 2 weeks in. I'm telling you this, Humphrey, just in case you don't know.
I'm a bit all over the place, so this is very helpful.
So Sherlock Holmes and the 12 Days of Christmas features new songs by the legendary musical duo Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. You and your longtime collaborator David Reed created and wrote the play, and you're the stars of it. You are Sherlock Holmes and David is Dr. Watson. And the play follows a series of mysterious deaths in London's Theatreland, each inspired by a classic Christmas carol. Sounds just great. It's already been included in The Guardian's list of best UK stage shows this Christmas. So please just take us through that first germ of an idea to opening night.
Sure. So way back, many centuries ago, to use a Tim Rice lyric, we were contacted in 2020 by Heartaches, which is Tim's production company. Tim had been to see Dave and I do a whole variety of things over the years, and he'd been to my solo show in 2011, 12 or something, and had always been a bit of a fan of ours. And they came to us and said, look, would you be interested in writing a pantomime? Because we like what you do, and we think there's a lot of interest in Christmas shows and Christmas theatre and this, that, and the other. We said, look, actually, we'd rather do a Christmas murder mystery, because I think that Christmas is synonymous with murder mysteries. We've always got an Agatha Christie on ITV1 at 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and I love those, and my whole family are obsessed with crime drama. So we said, well, what about a silly, funny, Christmassy crime caper? And they said, yes, great, let's do it. And then as time went on, we wrote a script. Again, 5 years ago, we wrote the first script, and they read it and they liked it. And Tim said, well, what if we did a few songs for this? And we said, yes, great. I think a Christmas show is not a Christmas show without a few good tunes.
Yes.
And then there was a certain amount of debate as to who the composer might be. And eventually, Tim came back and said, how do you feel about Andrew? And we were like, well, sure. He's quite good at songs. And so, yeah, they got the old band back together, basically, because it's the first time they've written this many new songs since about 1986 together. I think they wrote one for a Wizard of Oz stage show. They got asked to write a special song for that, and they maybe added one into a production of something. I can't remember what, but this is the first time they've actually worked together as a duo since Evita. We were, unsurprisingly, very keen for them to do that. The show went out to a few different places. We said, is anyone interested in staging this? And yes, thank God, Birmingham were like, yes, we'd like to do that. And it's worked out amazingly, because I didn't realize that Birmingham is basically the Christmas capital of the UK. It's got the biggest German Christmas market outside of Germany, I think. And we found people here are bang up for Christmas, even on about November the 15th. A long way out.
2 weeks in, how is it going?
It's been brilliant so far. It's so funny because it's been very interesting watching people's reactions, because I think a lot of people have arrived thinking, oh, it's going to be a panto. It's going to be like a Sherlock Holmes themed panto. And it's not really. We do have a pantomime dame, but spoiler alert, she gets murdered. And we have all these songs and things, but it is also quite dark and strange. And it's really fun watching audiences calibrate to that, because it takes a minute. And we've learned that now over 2 weeks. So we'll start off being like, are they all right? Everyone's looking a bit baffled in the audience. And then after about 10 minutes, they're like, oh, I see what this is. And then they really get into it, which is really fun.
Theatre productions are full on when you're just one piece of the pie. But in this situation, you've written it, you're directing it, you are it, you're all the pieces in the pie. How have you managed to juggle all of that?
It's good. I'm not directing it, I should say. That's Phil Breen and Becky Hope Farmer have done a wonderful job directing. But yeah, it is funny because I did a play at the National Theatre in the summer where I was very much just a gun for hire, acting-wise. And it was a joy because you turn up, you do your bit, you control what you control, and then you leave. And then when you're wearing multiple hats, as we are in terms of writing and acting in it, you're just always looking to fiddle and tinker and improve. And we had a call today about moving some little bits around and fiddling. And especially when it's the first time play, you learn so much from your audiences. And so it's been very labor intensive. And as I speak, the rest of the gang are doing understudy rehearsals at the moment for inevitably when one of us gets a terrible flu or COVID or something, breaks an ankle, whatever it may be. So every day, really, for the last 2 weeks, we have been doing multiple shows a day, or we're re-rehearsing, or we're tinkering, or we're fiddling around. And it's been a lot, but it's been amazing because it's so exciting to go out every night and be like, right, what are we going to learn from tonight's show?
And this isn't the first time you've played Sherlock Holmes, is it? Because in fact, in researching you, you were Sherlock Holmes in a film with Bob Geldof, a very short film called I Am Bob.
I don't think I had a line in that short film, but I was playing Sherlock Holmes.
I know that now because I watched it, but you were there in full kit.
Full regalia.
Yes. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle first introduced Sherlock Holmes to the world in 1887 with the book A Study in Scarlet. So that's 138 years ago. What is it about Sherlock that has stood the test of time, do you think?
Well, I will say one addendum to that, very good, well-researched fact, is that I think he wrote that whilst he was in Birmingham.
Oh, did he?
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, yes. So he studied here, I think, at the university. He did his medical degree here. There are 10 million Arthur Conan Doyle scholars around the world just roared their frustration at my inaccuracy. But in Birmingham, you'll see Baskerville House and Sherlock Street. There are all sorts of things where you can see where he picked up names and things for his books. But yes, why do we love Sherlock Holmes so much? I mean, I think he is the first superhero in a way. He has this extraordinary deductive ability and powers of observation that are semi-supernatural. And he unfailingly delivers the goods. Is the archetype for really every detective that came after. I think there are debates about whether he is the first detective. I think there's what his name is now, this French detective who arguably is this archetype for Sherlock Holmes even that came before. But Conan Doyle is such a brilliant writer and the stories are so wonderfully intricate and yet simple. And he catches that amazing thing that Agatha Christie is so good at, giving you all the facts, but not necessarily in the correct order. And then by the time you get to the end, you're like, right, yes, of course. How did I not see that? It services a love of puzzles that we have. It services a desire that we all have to see justice served and to be reassured that while catching baddies is not something we can do in our everyday lives, that there are people out there who have this incredible ability to never rest and always make sure that justice is served. Yeah, I think it's all those things.
Is there any way that the rest of us are going to be able to see it? Is it going to be televised at any time? Is there a hope that that might happen?
I mean, I wouldn't say no if the BBC are listening. You want to stick it on Christmas Day next year? Yeah, I mean, we hope so. We're 2 weeks into the first outing of this show. And I think the show that we will have at the end of these 2 months, effectively, that it is that we're doing this, will look very different to the one we had at the start. And so we'll always be growing and evolving. And our hope is that it will have life beyond this and we'll remount it. It's obviously the very Christmassy show, so it locks us into a period of the year when it can and can't be done. But yeah, our hope is that Sherlock and the gang will ride again next year and the year after that. And if it makes its way onto the screen, all the better.
For Bandwidth Conversations, this podcast, we typically do a quick life review, if I may. Could you just give us a flavour of your early years?
Yes, well, I was extremely fortunate and very privileged growing up. I was born into an affluent upper middle class family. My dad would be rolling in his grave at being described as upper middle class. I'm sure he'd prefer upper class, but I was very fortunate. I didn't want for a great deal as a child, but I was always a bit of a fantasist and a bit of an escapist. I liked being on my own. I liked running around the woods behind the house and pretending to be a rider of Rohan. I was a big Lord of the Rings fan. And when I was back in the house, I liked reading novels and history books and all sorts of things. And I like keeping myself to myself, really. I had always had the intention of joining the army. Again, as a child, I was very fascinated by my grandfather was a decorated war hero. And on my father's side and my mother's father had a very good war, as they say. And I just was like, that's what I want to be. I want to join the army and I want to wear a smart uniform and I want to march around the place and run around in the woods pretending to be a soldier. I went to boarding school and was very fortunate. I was enormous and so never encountered any degree of bullying. Had a very good time, got along with everybody very well, liked messing around and making my friends laugh. That was my main objective. So when I got to university, that was the first point at which I started to have slight doubts about what I had always imagined my life was going to be, because I lived above the university theatre company and didn't know anyone and wandered in there on the first day at university and signed up for a couple of different classes and things like that. And I loved the theatre. I loved TV and movies and books and writing and creativity, but I just didn't think any of that was for me. It was so competitive and I don't know if I've got anything to say that anyone's interested to hear. But it completely changed my life because I loved it. I loved performing and I loved being part of something. I liked working with other people to create things. I also simultaneously started to slightly fall out of love with the idea of joining the army for a combination of factors. The three main ones being we invaded Iraq in 2003 and I was like, I didn't really want to shoot anyone. My vision of the army had always been just smart uniforms, driving around Salisbury Plain in a tank, being like, this is fun, but then not having to actually do any of the horrible stuff. And then I went to visit my regiment, which was Coldstream Guards, who had very decently sponsored me, my grandfather's regiment. And I couldn't fit inside the Warrior armored personnel carrier. I'm 6'7". And when I sat in the seat that I would have to sit in, my head was poking out of the top of the armored personnel carrier. And so I was like, oh, that seems bad. I quite need my head inside the vehicle when I'm being shot at. And also I had to sign up for the officer training corps at university. And every time I turned up for my medical, they were always like, oh, was that today? Oh, yeah, the medical officer's playing golf today, I'm afraid. He's not here. I just started being like, I sort of want him to be on time. If I get shot, you want the medical MO to be there to patch you up.
Yes.
So, yeah, it came at this time of flux. And I came out of, as I say, I went to Eton, and which was, I really enjoyed. I had a great time, lovely people there. But obviously, it's a very specific environment. When I arrived at university, even at Edinburgh, which is quite a posh university, I was just like, wow, this is all these different people from all different walks of life. And I want to live in all of this and be part of this and not go straight back into an institution and follow that path that had been sort of laid down for me before I was even born. Long answer to your question.
No. It's a fantastic answer. I want to bring you back a little bit because you were at Ludgrove and then you were at Eton, I think, and you had a very famous roommate at Ludgrove, Prince William, who was hopefully able to have a bit of a normal time for a moment there. But I was a teacher at Eton, and I think I was there at the same time as you were. You were a boy, and you probably won't remember because I didn't teach you, but I was Miss Porter. I was a maths teacher, and
oh my God, this is a great revelation. Of course, I remember Miss Porter. You were one of very few.
There were only four of us
at the time.
There were only four of us at the time, and it was a lovely job. Although discipline was not my forte, that's for sure. But I was looking at the dates and I thought, oh my goodness, I started teaching at the same time you would have arrived.
You were a maths teacher?
Teacher. I was a maths teacher.
You taught the cleverer boys at maths. I was in the bottom group. So I had a bit of a...
Yeah, I did. But I just wondered, because boarding school is wonderful for some people and it's not for everyone. From the sound of it, from what you're saying, it served you well. Would you say that or not really?
It really did. I have very mixed feelings about it because I think that in some ways it's wonderful. And when it's wonderful, I often cite, because people know and understand that. I think one of the things J.K. Rowling did very well in the Harry Potter books is she captured what's wonderful about boarding school, that idea of you live with all your friends all the time. And so you go around together, you do everything together. It's a very intimate environment for that reason. I think there's a lot of questions to be asked about taking children away from their parents at the age of 8 or whatever, and what that does to you and your relationship with your family. Mine is good, but it's distant, I think, in comparison to a lot of my friends. I have a good professional working relationship with my family. That's almost the way it feels sometimes. And I think that's maybe a function of that taking it away. So it suits some people, it doesn't suit some people. It's also hugely down to chance and who you get put with. And Ludgrove was much smaller. There's about 190 boys there. And I know pretty much everybody in my year, and some people I liked and some people I didn't like. When at Eton, it was 256 boys in my year or something like that. And you're divided up into houses. And I was very lucky. there were about 11 of us in my house, and 9 of us were absolutely thick as thieves. And the other 2, one was super into skateboarding, which none of the rest of us were. So he went and hung out with all the other skateboarding kids. We got on with him fine, but he just was always like, right, see you, I'm going skateboarding. And the other one was massively into being a theatre technician, funnily enough. And so he was always off doing theatre technician stuff. We had a great time. We were very lucky, but I had friends as well who were in other houses who were like, it's not good, because ironically, we had a very strict housemaster. And that
Who was your housemaster?
Peter Thackeray.
Oh, yeah.
For him.
Yes, I do.
He was quite fierce, and we were all a bit afraid of him, which actually creates a much better environment. You need, weirdly, despite being a Democrat myself, you need a benevolent tyrant in that situation to keep everybody in line. Whereas we had friends who were in other houses, they were like, oh, our housemaster's really lax. And you were like, oh, yeah, that sounds way more fun. But actually, it ended up always, those people were like, oh, it's chaos. And boys are being horrible to other boys and doing strange and terrible things. But no, I was very lucky. I coasted through the whole thing and had a good time. If I had children, I don't know if I would have necessarily been like, yes, you've got to go to boarding school.
Yeah. And were you acting when you were at Eton as well? Because I did teach Eddie Redmayne and Tom Hiddleston, and I wondered whether you might have been in that whole cohort of actors at that stage.
I was in A Few Good Men, the house play version thereof, the Aaron Sorkin stage script. And I was in a production of Jesus Christ Superstar as literally 12th Apostle. I don't think any of my characters had a name in that. But again, at that stage, I was like, oh, maybe. I've enjoyed all that. But I definitely, for a long time, was just laboring under the misapprehension. Just like, well, I can't do this. Wouldn't be any good at that. So I'm not going to even try. Eton, as you know, is an extraordinary place because it has such good facilities for all sorts of things. And I do look back now and I'm like, oh God, I wish I'd thrown myself a bit more into some of the extracurricular stuff. Not that I particularly threw myself into the curricular stuff. I just liked going and watching The Simpsons and eating a sausage sandwich. That was really what I spent most of my time in.
That doesn't make you a bad person. You move on to Edinburgh, you meet up with David Reed and Tom Tuck, and the 3 of you then form this comedy troupe, the Penny Dreadfuls. How did you get together?
Well, there was also a 4th member of the Penny Dreadfuls, Jamie Anderson, who was with us for a bit and then moved to America. But we met doing improv comedy. There was an improvised comedy troupe there, very Whose Line Is It Anyway style business called the Improverts, which over the years has had quite a lot of really quite extraordinary people pass through it. Our generation, we had Lucy Kirkwood and Al Smith and Miles Jupp and lots of people who'd gone on to win Olivier Awards and this, that, and the other and blah. But in our particular year, there were the 4 of us and we liked working together and we enjoyed making people laugh, and we'd started to branch out. We did gigs in Glasgow and we were like, oh, it's not just other students that seem to enjoy this. There's like other people seem to quite like it too. So we formed a sketch team basically out of that, of the 4 of us, and started doing shows in Edinburgh for other students, but then always with an eye on going to the Edinburgh Festival, and which in 2005 for us was part of the ladder of comedy in a way. Was like, go and do a good Edinburgh, and then if you do really well, you'll get a radio show, and if that does well, maybe you'll get a TV show version of it. I was trying to get on the last helicopter out of Saigon with that methodology of getting yourself on telly. It was still happening when we were starting out, but by the time we finished there, I did my show in 2011, my one-man show, and the BBC were very into it and supportive of it, but it became apparent that it was no longer, if this show does well in Edinburgh, you can make a pilot based on that. It was a lot more like, we'd like to read a script, and if we like it, then maybe we'll think about developing it, and maybe then you'll get a chance to do it.
But your Penny Dreadfuls, you did manage to go on to get a Radio 4 show, so it was hugely successful.
It absolutely was. That era was very fun. We just moved to London and we were working out of Henry Wood House, which is right next to Broadcasting House, and very excited to be writing in rooms that we knew all these great British comedies had been written in, and go and perform it in Broadcasting House in the BBC Radio Theatre, which is an amazing venue. That was a lot of fun. We had a very good time.
And very brave, I think, because you were also at that time, or I don't know whether it was slightly after, doing your own stuff and doing more improvisation, which I just think is the hardest performing art of them all, because the audiences have no mercy. You can't even prepare. I would personally find that horrific to try.
It's like many things. There is a skill set that you can learn, and you can have lessons and classes, and you can practice, and you can understand techniques that will always help you to get somewhere. I mean, one of the things that's quite nice about it is that if you're doing a very heavily scripted thing and people are not enjoying it, you are locked in. You're like, oh no, we've got another 40 minutes of this to dead silence or whatever it may be. Whereas at least in improvisation, you can probe and you can get a sense of, oh, this is what people are responding to. They want more filth, we'll give them more filth. They want something a bit more refined, we can go in that direction. They like surreal, they want terrible puns, whatever it may be. You get to probe an audience and work out what they're after and then just hammer that, essentially. So improv and improvisation has been an incredibly useful and important part of my career. And I think it helps you to, even as a writer, when you go script comedy, a lot of the same rules apply in terms of improvisation. The phrase yes and is a really important thing, which is anytime someone starts a scene, they offer you something. They're like, hello, I'd like to buy some bread or whatever. You can't go, we don't have any bread, because the scene ends. So you're always being like, oh, yes, absolutely. Although the mayor has come in this morning and he wants all the bread. So I'm sure we can work something out. You're always looking to build on whatever it is that the other person's offering you. And as long as you're, say, agreeing with them and building on it, you're usually heading in the right direction. So that Improverts Edinburgh University was, I can trace everything that I do in my life now back to going to those classes.
Did you have any resistance from your family if they were expecting you to go into the army? Were they accepting of your career choice?
My mum was quite pleased because I think she was always worried that I would get shot. Dad was a bit more sort of, oh no, but he didn't really have a leg to stand on because he also was supposed to go into the army and had not, for a variety of reasons. So I was always like, well, you didn't. I think, to be honest, they were worried about it at the start, but it came from a place of them being like, that's a really difficult world. And we've got various friends who've gone down that path and they're always struggling for money and they're always worried about where the next job's going to come from and the next this, that, and the other. And definitely, I think for a long time, they did both worry a great deal. But then as time went on and I started to work more and started to contribute to things towards the end of their lives, I could say, well, don't worry, I'll pay to fix the gate because I'm doing all right. That definitely helped. And they actually were both very, very excited about this. My mum has been already and will come back about 3 more times before the end of the run.
That's so lovely. I have watched you in various things. I'm going to just mention a handful. So in terms of improvisation, you're in Fast and Loose, and you were great in that, hosted by Hugh Dennis. The whole thing would frighten the life out of me, thinking on your feet in front of camera and holding your own with the funniest people on TV, which you are one of them. Whose Line Is It Anyway? Live at the Electric. It's Your Round. Have I Got News for You? The News Quiz. You talked about doing this debut solo where you were Humphrey Ker as Dimmock Watson, Nazi smasher. And at that point, you won the Edinburgh Comedy Newcomer Award. That was the one that could have turned into something for television, but times were changing.
Yeah, so I wrote a couple of pilots back. It would have been a wildly expensive thing for the BBC to do because it was set in Romania in World War II and we blew up a dam and people were parachuting into things and there were submachine gun battles on the top of a castle and things like that.
How did you do that on stage?
Well, lots of judicious use of sound effects and lighting states and this, that, and the other. The version that I wrote for the BBC was a bit more action-packed than the stage version. But the joy of the stage version was I played about 15 different characters and would jump from one side of the stage to the other and whip off various bits of uniform. And I wore white tie underneath a World War II battle dress. So halfway through the show, I would rip off the army uniform, like a sort of very unsuccessful stripper, and then do the rest of the show in my very, very sweaty white tie. That was a show that got me an agent in the US. And a year or so later, that's what took me out to America, where I met my wife and my life completely went off in a different direction again, in a very nice way. That one was a big one.
In between times, you were the curator in Series 6 of BBC Radio for comedy panel show, The Museum of Curiosity. And the reason I mention it, it was just the most awesome show. And John Lloyd is a former guest on the show. He was Professor of Ignorance while you were the curator, and called him and said, do you have a question for Humphrey? And he said, well, I'm going to quote him. My only question to the delight that is Humphrey Ker is how the devil are you, sir? So how much does your career overlap with him?
Oh, not as much as I would like. I was so thrilled when I was asked to do that. And I had such a fun time. I can say this unabashedly because I'm only in one series of it. They have a different curator every series, and it is well worth tracking down. I'm sure there's a podcast version of it for people at home. It shares a lot of DNA with QI, which is another show that I love. And they just have fascinating people on to talk about fascinating objects that they think are worth putting into a museum. And it's never less than interesting, and it's frequently very funny. So it's a good one. But yes, John, I mean, I'm a huge admirer of his, and Blackadder was such a massive part of my childhood and my journey. And that was the crossover, especially Blackadder Goes Forth, that military history interest and comedy. And I think anyone coming to see Sherlock Holmes and the 12 Days of Christmas would see the DNA that this show shares with Blackadder.
Yes. When you went to America, you were cast in the reboot of Greatest American Hero. You appeared in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is my son's absolute favorite show, watching it all the time. American Auto, Mythic Quest, and that was co-created by your wife, Megan Gantz, with Rob McElhenney. You had a conversation with Rob McElhenney about football that resulted in Rob and Ryan Reynolds buying Wrexham Football Club and you becoming Wrexham's executive director, Wrexham moving up the league tables from National League to Championship League, which is 3 promotions. And I'm watching the series now. I don't know anything about football, never liked football, but the series is making me love it and finally understand how important it is in knitting together the fabric of a community. It's a wonderful series and a wonderful story. And I know you've had to tell it time and again, Humphrey, but just briefly, how did it happen?
I was working as a writer on Mythic Quest, as you mentioned earlier, which was co-created by Rob McElhenney and my wife, Megan Gantz. A bit of nepotism got me through the door on that one. And at the start of lockdown, we were all sent home for 2 weeks in LA. They're like, just going to shut down for 2 weeks. Everyone go home. It's like, oh, great. You got 2 weeks off. Let's have a good time. And everybody was sending around recommendations of things to watch and do and read and play and whatever it may be. And I sent Rob a documentary called Sunderland Till I Die. And I said, watch this. This will more than anything explain to you why British football fans, our relationship with football and what it is, and why I think it's very different to American sports fans' relationships with their teams. And he watched it and he loved it. And he texted me back and was like, hey, we should do this. We should buy a football team. And I chuckled and was like, haha, I can't buy a football team. I mean, maybe you can, but I couldn't afford one. You don't pay me enough. And he said, no, but seriously, like, how much would it cost to buy a football team? So I treated it a little bit like everyone was treating Duolingo or making sourdough bread or banging pots and pans and things. That was just like a fun lockdown activity. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to draw up a list of teams and I'm going to recommend one. And I did. And the one that came top of the list was Wrexham AFC in North Wales. And yes, all of a sudden, within 2 or 3 weeks, Rob had found a company called Inner Circle Sports, who specialized in the purchase and transfer of sports teams and things to people all over the world. And they'd made contact with Wrexham and things were starting to move. And then Rob messaged me one day and said, oh, I've contacted this friend of mine who owns a gin company to see if he wants to sponsor the front of shirts. Weirdly, immediately, I was like, is that Ryan Reynolds in my head? Because I knew he owned a gin company. And Rob gave it a big build up. I wouldn't tell me who it was. He was like, oh, and he's this and he's that. And I was like, that's just Ryan Reynolds. And yeah, he had contacted Ryan to see if he wanted to sponsor the team. And Ryan said, oh, I don't want to just sponsor the team. This sounds amazing. I'd love to go halves with you on it. And at that stage, that completely changed our calculations on everything, because it went from being, this is a weird, quirky, interesting little thing, to like, we've got one of the most recognizable people on the planet involved. And Ryan, was immediately bought into the whole notion of it, which was using a football team to improve the fortunes of a town that it's attached to. Because I think Rob recognized from Sunderland Till I Die how symbiotically intertwined football teams and their communities are. Sunderland Till I Die, you watch a community lose a really important part of itself. And thank goodness they're back in the Premier League now and doing really well. So that's got a really long-term, lovely, happy ending. But Rob had this notion of, what if we made Sunderland Till I Die, but rather it being slightly heartbreaking about things going wrong for a team, what if we make it really uplifting and lovely about things going really right for a team in the community? And that's fortunately what we've wound up being able to do.
Yes, and of course you never know if it's going to happen or not. And in those first episodes, it doesn't look like it is happening, which makes it all the sweeter when it does start working. Well, And that has made you a treble promotion-winning cult hero football executive. So that is massive. What have been the
Nice
biggest
accolades.
What have been the biggest wins for you?
Honestly, it sounds a bit corny or self-serving or whatever it is, but really the best thing has been just talking to people outside the stadium, long-term fans of the club, people from Wrexham who were feeling like the thing that they loved was dying or had died, and that they no longer could face coming to watch Wrexham lose 2-0 at home to Ebbsfleet or whatever it was. This great institution that had found itself on its bare bones. To see that we've managed to bring that back for all those people. And people are constantly saying, I met my wife here in 1964 and she came with her family and I came with my family and we fell in love in the stands and we got married and we used to come back all the time. And then when she passed away 8 years ago, I just couldn't bring myself to come back. And also because everything was going so badly. But then my grandchildren got season tickets and they were like, no, you've got to come. And I've had this magical second lease of life with this place. And those are the things that just feel so much more important than whether we win or not on a Saturday. I mean, fortunately, we've been very lucky and we have won a lot on Saturday and that's made it really good. The other thing I often say is hearing from folk who live locally who take their children to play under nines football. And they said it all used to be Liverpool, Manchester City, Barcelona, Real Madrid shirts. And now all the kids are in Wrexham shirts. I think restoring that pride to the community is the best thing about it.
Yeah. There was one guy, I think, who was asked what's on his bucket list. And I thought it might be a trip somewhere. And it was like, we want Wrexham to be promoted. That was the most important thing for him. What was the most unexpected challenge that you didn't foresee?
I think the most unexpected challenge was the difficulty around realizing that change is good and for some people bad. We encountered a few people who are in and around the club who had carved out their life and their relationship to the whole thing in a way that suited them very well and it was nice for them. But the modernization and the improvements and all that stuff was not really compatible with the life that they were enjoying and wanting to lead. And so it's difficult to say goodbye to people or having to move people on when those things don't line up in that way. And we always try very hard to be as compassionate as possible, but inevitably, some people haven't really enjoyed the takeover and this and the other because it fundamentally changed their relationship to the club that they had built and that they liked. So that was tricky. I'm a bit of a people pleaser. I don't really like people not being that happy that I've turned up and thrown a big stone in the pond.
Yeah. Was there anything that hasn't been shown on screen that you'd like people to know about?
There are many things. The way the documentary works and the way storytelling works, there's lots of stuff people get focused on, myself being one of them, Rob and Ryan and the manager and the few key players and Sean Harvey and various people. But of course, there are so many people there who are doing such brilliant, excellent work that doesn't really get covered because there's just not enough time or there's not enough focus. They don't want to spread it too thin. And you have dozens and dozens and dozens of people who turn up every day and work so hard. Now, as a director, I'm chair of the Wrexham AFC Foundation Trust Board. So I'd sit on our charitable arms board and we do amazing work in the community through them that largely is not covered by the documentary. And the people in Wrexham know about it and they really appreciate it. And I, at times, am desperate for the documentary to shine a light on it, not least of all because I think as people see what we're doing, the more people know that we're doing, the more and better we can do that thing. So, yeah, I think the documentary is always like an ice core of a small section of what's going on. And they do a very good job of capturing what's going on. But of course, it's only a snapshot.
Well, 4 seasons, 8 primetime Emmys and 3 promotions later. What a triumph. And I heard you ran a marathon. Was that this year or was that last year that you ran your marathon?
It was this year, April the 26th, I think it was.
Wow, good for you.
Not my favorite activity.
Oh, gosh, there are a few people who like it, but
I know, widows.
I couldn't do it. It's impossible. Was that for a specific project?
Yes, so that was for Wrexham Miners Project, which is a charity in Wrexham that I'm the patron of, which is an amazing organisation that is both preserving Wrexham's mining heritage. They took over the old miners' rescue station from very unscrupulous developers who were trying to knock it down, this beautiful Victorian building, and they saved it and they now run it as a centre for art classes for children with learning difficulties and homeless people and older people that just need someone to come and be warm. It's just this wonderful, welcoming space in Wrexham. run by volunteers who are doing good deeds left, right, and centre. The club made them our official charity partner, and I said if we didn't raise a certain amount of money, then I would run a marathon to try and raise the money. And unfortunately, I had to run the stinking marathon.
Looking ahead, what is the endeavour that you are yet to embrace? Could be football, could be acting, could be something entirely different.
The main endeavour I'm looking forward to is having a nice rest. I'm looking forward to just spending most of the spring and summer doing knackle. One of the things I love about my life is that I do get to do lots of different little bits and pieces, which is really nice, and spread myself around a bit. But the reality is my wife and I are looking to move back to the UK properly. I still theoretically live in LA, albeit I've been here for months at the moment. And honestly, the biggest thing I want to throw myself into is just building a home and a life for us here, and moving into the next phase of our lives together with excitement.
Lovely. And how are you going to fit Christmas and Wrexham into your Sherlock Holmes and the 12 Days of Christmas? Because presumably you're performing pretty much every day, aren't you now?
Yeah, we have Christmas Day off and we have Boxing Day off. And so Christmas Eve, quite late, I'm going to drive down to Wiltshire to my mum's house for Christmas. And then I think Boxing Day, I'm going to have to drive up to Wrexham to go and watch Wrexham versus Sheffield United. Back to Birmingham. I think so. Inevitably, the last 3 years, I've had the plan to do this, and I've got sick just before Christmas. So my main objective of Christmas is to make it through it without coming down with flu.
Well, Sherlock Holmes and the 12 Days of Christmas, it's at the Birmingham Rep, and Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice have written the songs. It runs until January the 18th. I suspect you're too modest to say, but I'm sure it is a roaring success. I'm going to really try and come and see it. But Humphrey, thank you so much for taking your time out to talk to me today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to Bandwidth Conversations. Thanks to Anna B, Head of Marketing, to all at the podcast consultant, to Bagawire for the music, to the Money Maze podcast. Thank you for listening. Any feedback, please email me, katie@bandwidthconversations.com. Please sign up on our website, www.bandwidthconversations.com, so we can notify you about new podcast releases. We hope to see you again soon.